everyone, it's Amy and welcome back to week 75 of the new Build Your Stash and Craft. Today we are going to make fabric braids. We are going to use scrap pieces of fabric and I'm going to show you what you can do with them. So here is a braid that I made out of some very small pieces of fabric, and I'm going to show you how you can wind up getting this nice long braid even if you only have small pieces of fabric. And then I'm also going to show you how to make a fabric paper clip. Just ways to use just your little bits, the things that we save them, but what are we going to do with them? And so I'm going to show you like this right here. Let's say we want to make a braid with this piece and this blue one. Now let's do we want them to be close to the same color? Maybe not. Let's go with a blue one and the tan one, and here's a very colorful one. So like this one is long enough to make a braid with, but it's got a lot of big white parts on it. And let's say you don't want to use the white part. So you only want to use the parts that have the color. Well, if you only want to use that part, that's now not big enough to make a braid with either way. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this piece longer. So this piece of fabric is, and it doesn't have to be anything perfect about them. It's not completely straight. It doesn't have to be. So we're just going to take this, and that's about 6 inches long, not quite. And so we're going to see how long of a braid that we can make out of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the fabric probably around a 1/2 inch thick, and then leave about a 1/2 inch at the top. Then you're going to flip it over. So now we've got that little piece over here, and we're going to come in now about 1 inch from the very edge, or a 1/2 inch from the piece that we just cut. And we're going to go the other way, again stopping before we get to the end, about a 1/2 inch, like that. Maybe even only about 1/4 inch, really. So we're going to flip it over, and then come in about a 1/2 inch from where we were cutting here, and go the other way. Because we're going to use this to braid, this works really well to braid, and it doesn't matter that it's going to kind of wind up being in different directions. So then we're going to turn this one over, and again, this one is really, and this was 6 inches long, but it wasn't that wide. It was only about, I should have measured how wide it was also. And I'm just going to cut this last little bit in half. Again, always just remember to stop before you get to the end. So there we go. Now let's put this back together really quick, if we can, because I want to see how wide it was, because that makes a difference on how many 1/2 inches you're going to have, which also makes a difference on how long it's going to be. Okay, so there we go. So that was approximately 3 inches across. Yep, about 3 inches wide by 6 inches long. But now we have this really long piece of fabric, and it is 1, 2. It's about 2.5 feet long. So we're going to do that with a few of them. Let's see how long this one is. This one's about 6 inches by 4 inches. So it'll wind up being even just a touch longer, because the other one was only 3.5 or something like that. So we're just going to, again, now if you've got something that's super lacy, make sure that it's real sturdy at the end, or you might want to leave just a little extra space there. Because we're going to braid this, that's 2. Just kind of was wondering, kind of want it to be about the same length, but that really doesn't necessarily matter. If it's a little longer, we'll just cut some off, or a little shorter, then we'll cut some off the other one. because I'm not doing this a 1/2 inch. I'm doing it just a little bit wider. Partly because I had a little bit more fabric, and because when this gets braided, it's such a thin, fine material that it's going to be really fine as it's braided. It's going to be a very skinny piece of fabric. You know, kind of when you crunch it all up, there's not as much to it as when you crunch up this fabric. So that's just my thought. So let's see what we have on this one. We won't measure all of them, but we'll do this one also. So this one is 1, 2. That one's about 2 feet 10 inches. So a little longer than the other one. So now we've got this piece of fabric here, which doesn't have much width to try and make it longer. So we're going to save that little bit of fabric for our paper clip cluster. We could do this white one, which really is already longer, but it's not as long as the other. That one is only 12 inches long. So if I cut this one in half, it's going to make it 2 feet long. That's still not as long as the other. Or is it? Oh, wait a minute. This was 24, so it's going to make it 48. I'm confused. I forgot what I measured. Or did I measure? There we go. 1, 2, a little over 3 feet, about 3.6 maybe. So now we've got 3 pieces, and I usually braid 3 pieces. Now you can braid more than that. There are different ways to braid. So if you have more pieces, you can look up different ways that you can braid your fabric. And so then what I do is I just take it and put my 3 ends together, and I tie a knot in the end. And I try and make it really close to the end because I want to use as much fabric as I have. And then what can you use your braids for? You can use them to make little coasters or little holders for, I'm going to tape this down, like to hold something, like to set a little pretty decorative dish or something on. You can use them on like the spines of your journals. So now I've got this whole 3 feet. So we are just going to braid. You've got 3 pieces. You just, I'm going to put this one over here because this one seems to be more in the middle. So you just take one side, we'll say the right side over the center. Then the left side, now this one's in the center, over the center. Then the right side over the center. And the left side over what's in the center. And always make sure that when you're doing it, that you pull those pieces all the way out. Don't just do like this, because then what happens is you wind up getting knots down here. So always make sure that after you put your fabric over top, that you pull that other piece out of the way and leave this one right in the middle. Now put this one here and then pull it all the way out to the right and pull this one all the way out to the left. And you just keep going over. Now, this braid is not going to be the prettiest braid because there's not much color in it. So that's a little bit like, aw, I would have preferred that it have a lot more color to it. But we can just go ahead and maybe, because there's a lot of tan and brown in here, this would probably be really cute to dye it with a coffee stain. Just stick it in a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. Let it sit for just a little while and it will turn all of the white tan or brown. And those are colors that I like. So, and we're getting to the point where you can't see what I'm doing. But let's see. Let's move this box of bits and we'll move this up a little bit. And I know most people know how to braid, but it's, at least if you can watch something happening, it's better than just sitting there and knowing that I'm braiding off the edge of the screen, but not being able to see anything. At least we're getting a little more color here. So see, this is one where the one that we cut the color off, we cut the white piece off of the colored part of the fabric. And this is a good reason, because we're already getting a lot of white. But if we had left all of this white in here and done it this way, there would have been a ton of white. And if that's what you're looking for, that works well. But, you know, to me with a braid, it's kind of nice to see a contrast. And so once we get this done, I guess I shouldn't have made it this long. No, I'm not going to do that. I was going to set the tripod on the paper to hold it down. You guys would have went for a ride. But it's, it takes a few minutes to do this. And this is going to be really long. So if I was going to put it on a journal, then I would decide what size that journal was going to be probably before I braided it. But remember that even though it was like, what, 3 feet 6 inches, I think? By the time it's done braiding, because it's wrapping around and around each other, it's not, whoops, it's not going to be 3 feet 6 inches long once it's braided. So if you know your spine of your book is going to be, let's say, 6 inches long, you definitely want to make sure that you've got more than 6 inches of fabric, because by the time you braid it, you're not going to have a 6-inch braid. It will be a little shorter. See if we can make this stick somewhere else, because braiding really doesn't put a lot of pressure. And again, like I said, remember to pull it all the way out, because it likes to get tangled in itself. This part here is actually looking really quite pretty. Just the beginning bit was awfully white. Whoops. And because of the way that we've got this cut, sometimes that's what's catching. And you could put some of your fibers in with it. You could put some yarn in there. Maybe put a different color yarn with each color strip of fabric. That would look really quite cute. But you just keep going until your shortest piece winds up being braided in. And then at that point, you can cut the other pieces off and tie a knot just like we did at the beginning. So we're getting close for our floral fabric to run out here now. And again, like I said, it's not necessarily that fun watching someone braid something. I should have maybe started one ahead of time or had one done ahead of time. I do try and do that. But this time I forgot. I was trying to figure out what we were going to make this week because I hadn't figured it out last week. Trying to get back in the swing of things and, you know, have everything ready the week before so you know what we're making. I still don't know what we're making next week, but hopefully I'm going to go to the Dollar Tree this afternoon and see if I can figure out something to make for next week. And then I'll do a video and let you know what that's going to be. So, okay, now I'm about to the end here, and I'm just going to, so it looks like I got about 3 more wraps here, or whatever you call these. There we go. Okay, so now I'm right to the end, and that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut these other 2 off. And then just hold that together. But make sure you hold it together so it doesn't unbraid. And then just tie it in a knot. Slide your knot right up close to the end, but make sure that you've still got all 3 pieces there. And there we go. So I'm going to cut this off too. And now we have this nice long braid. And like if I was going to have this for a tassel, I would leave these few pieces here. I do like to rip them sometimes and have the hairy edges on them. That's also really fun to do. And sometimes after you have got them all braided, you can give it a pull and it kind of like levels things out a bit. You will have pieces that might stick out here and there. I like that. As a matter of fact, that's kind of like a little bit of a tab. You can put a jump ring on there and hang a charm if you're going to take this and use it on the spine of one of your journals, and you'll just have a little charm hanging off the edge. You can also use these, attach them at the top, and then leave them long so that they can be used as a bookmark. So, or you can just take them, and when I was saying that you can use them like as a little, I said a coaster, but you really don't want to use it for a coaster because it's fabric. And so if you have a sweaty glass, it's just going to get it wet, and that would not necessarily be the best thing. But it's cute to have where you can just have it and then take a little decorative something or other and just set it on top like that, and it just looks cute. But when you're doing this then, see now this one I would want to do more and make it a little bit bigger. But once you get it twisted like that, or you can actually start right when you start twisting it, you're going to want to sew it together because it's not going to just stay like that. So you can twist the whole thing and then just start basically in the middle. And then you're just going to go over to like your first loop. And then back to the middle. Into the first loop until you get all the way around. It's really easier to do it. Let's get this unstuck here. It's easier to do it just a little bit at a time. All right, so I started in the knot and hit that first side there. Came back up through the knot, and then we'll just go down here. And you can make them as tight or as loose as you want them. And you just go around like that. And as you give it a little bit of a twist, just go from one point to the next. Go straight across here. Now I'm coming down right here. So I am going to come up over here. So there's going to be a bit of thread. So always make your thread move from one point to the next from on the underside. So and on the top side, just come up and then go right next to it to go back down again so that those stitches don't show. And then on the underside, you're going to go a little ways. I'm just going to wrap that one around a little bit and go down right there. And so you can just keep doing that all the way around. And like I said, then you can do another braid and just start with the new braid. You can do them different colors. So this one is mostly white. You could do the next one mostly in blues. And I'm just going to put a few tacks in here because I'm almost out of thread, and I'm sure you don't want to sit here and watch me just sew. But I think that they look cute, and I really do like to use them for little journal like dangles on your journals. And I'm out of thread. Let's see if I just take my, I'm going to take the needle and just put it in here. See if I can't just, nope, can't even get the thread to go that far. All right, I'm going to worry about that right now. But there we go. So that's what it would look like. And then you just take another one. I would cut this off. And then put the next knot right next to this knot. And just continue until you get it as big as you want. You can make them really big and make a pot holder out of them. Make them about maybe 5 or 6 inches across. And use them as a pot holder. Or like I said, just use them as a little decorative. Just a little decorative, kind of like a doily, but not a doily. And if you don't like the way when you get to the very end, you don't want that knot to stick out there, then you kind of tuck it in underneath, or you can cut the knot off and sew that last little bit flat against where you're putting it if you're going to use it like this. So, but that's one thing you can do with just tiny bits of scrap fabric. You can make an awfully long braid from just a very small pieces of fabric. And then, you know, to make a fabric paperclip, they're so simple, and it's really just about actually having little bits and just kind of picking your color theme. Yep, I got it. Picking your color theme and just grabbing little bits of that color and seeing what you can come up with. Not thinking too hard. So what I've done is, in order to start, what we're going to put as a base of our paperclip is you just take a paperclip and you put it on a piece of cardstock. Just like that. Okay, and I make my fabric paper clips about, you know, a couple inches square or so. Now, you want to make sure that your paper, your cardstock, is a little bit longer on the long side of your paper clip and a little shorter on the short side, so that when you go to put it on your project, it will be easier to put on. And then what I do is I just kind of round those edges, and they don't need to be any kind of perfect. Because the round edges seem to go onto your paper a little easier than the square ones. And I don't know, that may just totally be in my head. But that's what I do. A little bit longer and a little bit shorter. And then just take another piece of paper and something that looks, you can put your fabric on both sides. I normally only put it on the front. And so, and you can do it just like that. And then just take a piece of cardstock and fold it over like this. So basically we're making a hidden paper clip so that it covers up the whole thing. I'm just going to cut that right there. And fold this over. And then we're going to just glue this together. And that one is right about there. And just round the edges of that one. And you are going to want to put this on a piece of parchment after you glue it together, so that you don't glue the two sides together. Because now your paper clip is, this is your paper clip here. So you don't want to glue that part together. We're going to glue this on the outside, making sure that you get glue all over the outside. Like I said, see, I got pretty close to the edge right there, and I don't want to glue this piece to this other piece. I don't want to glue the front and back together. So this is our front, this is our back. We're going to glue this on here just like this. Give it a good push. And now, if we don't cover both sides, we will have a colored background and the fabric on the front. And then we're just going to take this and we're going to put it on a piece of parchment paper. I don't have any parchment right here, but we're going to take parchment paper and we're going to stick it on there like that and let it dry. And once it's dry, if we don't like the way that, you know, this is rounded or whatever, you can go back in and trim that off. Just make sure you give it a good press. And again, like I said, put the parchment paper so that this side doesn't stick to this side. Hopefully that won't glue itself to it. But that's how you do it. You start out with just a folded piece of cardstock with a paper clip on it. Then you put another piece on top of that and glue it. And I've got one here that's already dry. I just had one here. Oh, there it is. Right there. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're just going to take your scraps. Now I pulled out, here's a couple of bits. I pulled out the different types of ribbon and stuff that we have. Some of the little bows that we made. Little bits of fabric. All different sorts. Here is the edge of a piece of the white fabric that we had. And we cut off the sewn part. Other little strips of dyed fabric that we dyed. And yarn and that type of stuff. So let's take this one because it's in the brown colors. Let's do brown. So I am going to, I like this piece. Oh, and this would look nice with that too. It's kind of a rust color. So you just take a piece of your fabric that's as big as what you're going to glue it to when you're done. Or bigger is also fine. And even smaller would be okay. Just depends on what look you're going for. I like to cover it up like that. And this is a little bit bigger all the way around. And so that is what I'm going to work with. Now, oh good, I thought I lost my needle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start going through and grabbing things that I think would look good with this little project. I do like green and brown together, so I think I'm going to take a piece of this. And it's even got a little bit of that brown in it. So I'm just going to take it and just stick it on there. And then maybe, oh, I like the lace. So this is a flower right here on the lace. So I'm just going to cut that flower out, just very kind of, organically, not perfect. I want to stay off the outside stitching of the flower because I don't want to cut it. And just go around. That outside stitching is stitched in the shape of a flower, so that's what makes it look like a flower, is that bit of stitching. And so there we go. And there. And see the stitching that goes around the edge, and that really does actually, help keep the shape of the flower. If you cut that off or cut right next to it, it might not show up as well. So I'm just going to take this, and I'm not worried about that at all right now. So I'm going to put that on there. I want a little something more under that, and I think I want it to be kind of maybe more in the tan tones. What do we have here? These are really quite pretty too. I think I'm going to take 3 of these. Cut the little hairs off the end here. I think that those would look pretty on there. And those can be, they actually are kind of like threaded together. They have string holding them together. So you can stitch that down or just glue it, however you want to do it. I like to stitch if it's fabric, if I can. And I don't want yellow. I really kind of wanted something darker. The maroon would be pretty. Let's put a little bit of this maroon back there. And like I said, nothing needs to be perfect. If you want that to have some kind of a, like a tail on it, you can do that. maybe put the, no, I don't want the tail up. I think I'll put the tail down here. And that tail's uneven, but I kind of like the way it looks, so I'm going to leave it that way. I'm going to cover up this end with the green. Then put this on here. I'm going to put these at the top instead of the bottom. And then we need a little bit of like string. We need something kind of fluffy in there. And string does really well whenever you, oh, that would work. This might work. Whenever you like take the string off the edges of your fabric, when you rip your fabric and you pull the strings off, those work great to layer like underneath your focal point. And this flower is going to be our focal point along with the button. But let's see about just taking some of this and just kind of wadding it around. And it looks best if you just do it just kind of so. It doesn't need to be like perfectly round or perfectly together. That gives it a little bit of depth, but the coloring is not right because you can't see it. So here we go. Here's some of our hand-dyed string. We'll use a little bit of this. And I am going to kind of like separate it up a little bit. Kind of like untwist it so that it's more like string, or, you know, more like fibers than a solid piece of string. Just kind of untwist it. That should probably be enough right to there. Take them apart. Now when I wad them up, the color will show. And that's what we want. We want, you know, we want to see those layers. Now we're going to take this and just kind of wad it together. And put it there. I really am having a problem with this very crooked top. So if something is super bothering you, go ahead and fix it. You don't have to, but you can if you want to. Bring this down a bit, and I don't want the end sticking out. I don't mind any of the loops sticking out, just not the end of the thread. I want to leave a bit of space up there because I know I want to attach those up there. So we're going to have that thread in there like that. Don't want the end sticking out, so I'm going to fold it in. And I say don't be fussy, but there are certain things that you may want to do, and go ahead and be fussy about those things. Like I said, if you want to do that top, or I want the ends of those strings inside. Now also what you can do is at this point in time, put a little bit of glue on like the ends of those strings or whatever, anything that you want to stay exactly where it's at. And then just start stitching it here and there. You're just tacking it down. It doesn't have to be, you know, it's going to stay together so long as each bit has a little bit holding it together. So you just want to make sure that you tack down the green piece, tack down the thread underneath, tack down the red maroon piece, and the lace. So long as you've got it tacked in a few places, it's not going to go anywhere. And then I want a button on here in the middle. I usually put a button in the middle of all of them. I'm going to put this up here. I'm just going to tack right through those threads that they have there. Kind of wants to go on an angle, so I'll let it. Let it go where it wants to go. Sometimes you just have to let your projects tell you exactly how they want to be. And then you'll find that you like that so much better. One more time, and knot it off on the back. So there we go. Put a little knot on the back, and because it's getting glued to your thing, you don't have to worry too much about what the back looks like. I don't think that's going to be long enough to put on a button. Oh, but there's another needle with some thread on it. Whoops. Whoops. It might help if you know how to. You just got to be smarter than the project. Alrighty, so, well, I can leave that doubled. Put a knot in it. I think that should be long enough to put on one button. And the buttons I have in here are all really dark, but there are some pretty, it's pretty cat-like cat's eye. And if you don't like the color of your buttons, paint them. Paint them with paint, paint them with fingernail polish, paint them any which way that you want to. They don't have to stay that color just because that's the way they started out. I could put that one on there. Or I think I like the one I started with. I like that one. Oh, here's a maroon one though. Oh, now I like that one. It's maroon. It's more like the size of what the flower center would be. So I'm just going to tack that one on. Now, if you get it done and you think, oh, it's just, there's something missing, then try adding a few things to it. Just because, you know, I always add my button at the end, but I can tell you right now that there's a lot of times I've added things after the button. So, because it's supposed to be done, in my mind, when the button goes on. But sometimes it just doesn't feel quite ready. So I add something else. And until you feel like it's done, it's not done. And I'm having a real hard time with sewing the button on today. There we go. And knot this off. Just like that. Alrighty, and then kind of almost wish I had like something very fluffy to put kind of under the button. But I don't see anything right now, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. This is going to go on here like this. And I'm going to straighten up this top. Then I'm going to just kind of round this bottom corner. And this bottom corner. Being careful not to cut anything else. And there we go. Now that's going to get glued right on there with just plain old tacky glue. And you do want to make sure that you have the glue out to the edge of the paper that you're gluing it to. The edge is the most important. How much you have in the middle doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that the edges are all glued down and that they're going to stay there. So we're going to press that really well. Make sure that it comes in contact all over. And then if you have a thin piece of fabric like we have here, and the glue might soak through a little bit, you might want to go ahead and lift some of those pieces if you want them to be more fluffy and you don't want them to be glued right to that backing. Then just lift them up a little bit before the glue dries so that they're not stuck to the bottom. And there we go. So there we have our fabric paper clip. And I'm going to get a straight edge here. I can just put that, see that paper clip goes on there really nicely if you round the corners. So there's our fabric paper clip and our braid. You can do it round like that, or you can have the braid part like that. So there we go. Those are today's projects with just tiny bits of scrap fabric. You know, we all have lots of maybe larger bits, but the tiny bits, oh, this might look nice on here too, now that I'm looking at it. The tiny bits, sometimes they're hard to use. Like you think, oh, well, what am I going to do with that? But this just goes to show that even the smallest of tiny bits, really, really tiny bits, and even small pieces can be made into like really long braids, which I love this messy look that it comes out with when you use the fabric that way and braid it that way. So thank you very much for stopping by. I will try and make sure that before next Tuesday, you know what we're going to need for next Tuesday. So thanks again. Please watch a commercial if you get a chance here and there. Share my videos with your friends if you enjoy them. And thank you very much for stopping by. I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.